At first, it seemed like a miracle, a happy ending to a years-long search. Rudy Farias, who was reported missing back in 2015, found alive in the same city where he disappeared. But that celebration was short-lived as the story twisted and turned in the days that followed. In this KHOU 11 Plus special, we're walking you through this case, breaking down what we know to be true, what we know to be false, and what we just don't know yet. Hi there, I'm digital anchor Brandy Smith. There are still a lot of unanswered questions in this case, and even as I'm recording this, there's an open Houston police investigation. So we'll try to provide some answers, but just know many are not available right now. First, the basics. This case centers around Rudy Farias IV, better known as Rudy. He was reported missing on March 7th, 2015 by his mother, Janie Santana. His half-brother and father passed away before his disappearance. We're gonna dig into that a little bit more in just a moment. After Rudy was found, the public has gotten to know some of his aunts, Pauline Sanchez and Sylvia Sanchez Lopez, and cousin Michelle Rodriguez. These folks come up again and again in this case, so I just wanted to make sure you're familiar with who's who. The first time Houston viewers heard the name Rudolph Farias was back in 2014, when Rudy's father, Rudolph Farias III, took his own life in a police parking garage. The 21-year HPD veteran had been relieved of duty and ordered to turn in his badge just hours earlier. Why? Because for weeks, KHOU 11 had been investigating a ticket rigging scam involving Farias and 3 other officers. Here's what investigator Jeremy Rogalski first reported on August 19th, 2014.
How could officers possibly be in 2 places at once? That's what the I-Team found took place, if you believe dozens of speeding tickets written by HPD's Traffic Enforcement Unit, including the officer who took his own life. For instance, he's listed on these 2 tickets, written at the same time on the Katy Freeway. The first near Westcott Street as a witnessing officer, the second writing a ticket near Gessner Road. That's 7 miles away. Or there's this set of questionable tickets on I-10. The same officer is supposedly at Westcott Street witnessing a speeder, but somehow 9 miles away at Wilcrest Drive, writing up a citizen at the same exact time. And we also found cases in which the officer was listed on 2 completely different roads. In this example, at 12:52 in the morning, the same officer is listed at 610 in Memorial, but also at 12:52, he's at I-10 in Gessner. The facts show it's fiction. So what would be the motivation? Court overtime, sources tell the I-Team. Witnessing officers are subpoenaed and must appear ready to testify. Turns out records show the officer who killed himself made $158,000 in overtime over the past 3 years.
The 3 other officers involved in the scam were Gregory Rosa, John Garcia, and Robert Manzanales. They all pleaded guilty to felony charges but avoided jail time. The city of Houston also dismissed all speeding tickets issued by the 4 officers involved in that ticket rigging scandal. Family members told us later that losing his dad had a big impact on Rudy, and as I mentioned before, he'd already lost his brother in a 2011 motorcycle crash. On March 6, 2015, Rudy's mom, Janie Santana, alleges the 17-year-old took the dogs for a walk near their home around Tidwell and C.E. King in Northwest Houston. The next day, when she reported him missing, she told police the dogs came back, but Rudy didn't. We've since learned, according to Houston police, that is true. Rudy ran away. But investigators say he returned home just a day later. Information that they say was never conveyed to searchers. And that's clear when you look at this Facebook post from Texas EquiSearch. The search and rescue organization shared this on March 7th, 2015, with updates about the search for Rudy on March 10th, 12th, and 13th. After getting 2 trucks stuck in rain-soaked fields and roads, EquiSearch announced on the 13th that it was temporarily suspending the search until more information became available. Efforts to find Rudy didn't stop, though. Just more than a year after he was reported missing, KHOU 11 reporter Rux Russell spoke to Janie Santana about the search for Rudy.
I'm afraid.
She'll share her fears, but not her face.
He hasn't checked his Facebook. He hasn't checked emails. Nothing.
It's been that way for more than a year. No word, no signs of Rudolph Rudy Farias, a 17-year-old Pasadena high school student and his mom's only living son.
It happened too fast. He disappeared.
Rudy was last seen walking his dogs right down here along Park Avenue that evening. He should have returned home in about 15 minutes, but his mom never saw him again.
He has such a huge heart. He loves with all his heart. So that's why we know that he wouldn't just get up and go on his own. That's not him.
Detectives have warned family members that he may have been abducted and sold for human drug trafficking. That's why she's hiding her face.
It's a nightmare that you want to wake up from.
But like so many other parents of missing kids, without answers, the nightmare continues.
That's what's killing me inside.
Rux Russell, KHOU 11 News.
That story first aired on May 25th, National Missing Children's Day. That same day in 2017, the Texas Center for the Missing unveiled a billboard to help generate leads to find Rudy. That billboard along the East Tex Freeway near Humble wasn't the only one featuring Rudy. Clear Channel Outdoor Americas also broadcast his photo on digital billboards 1,200 times a day for a month. And that brings us to 2018, when Houston police say they got a call telling them Rudy was living outside a family member's house. HPD says its officers followed up and didn't find Rudy. For years, as far as the public was concerned, the case went cold. Then what appeared to be a break. On June 29th, 2023, a Good Samaritan found Rudy in front of a Houston church about 25 minutes away from where he was last seen 8 years before. That person called 911. Officers say they were able to identify Rudy because he was wearing a necklace that belonged to his late brother. Anieli Ruiz caught us up on what we knew as of July 3rd.
Found alive after 8 years, Rudy Farias has been missing since March of 2015.
And thank God he's alive. I mean, this is one of them miracles that you don't experience very often.
He was last seen near his home, and just last week he was found here outside this church. Tim Miller was one of the dozens of people that have been looking for Rudy from the get-go.
We started out at his house where he disappeared from, where he was walking his dogs, and I'll never forget finding his backpack out in this empty lot, field and stuff.
And Houston police tell us they did get a call from family members in September of 2018. They had spotted Rudy living behind a family member's home, but HPD did not find him, and they could not provide the address for us. But after 8 years, a miracle. A Good Samaritan found him unresponsive outside this church. Neighbors say they saw when police showed up to the scene.
There was a person that were trying to wake him up. HPD couldn't wake him up, like he was completely out of it.
But police confirmed it was Rudy. In a statement, Rudy's mom said her son is now receiving the care he needs to overcome his trauma. She said he's currently nonverbal and is not able to communicate with them, but she will share more details as Rudy continues to heal.
Rudy's family is excited. I mean, they are over the moon. They're excited. But they're also worried. You know, Rudy's not doing well.
In pictures released by the family, you could see Rudy has cuts and bruises on his body. As you can imagine, the family is waiting for Rudy to heal.
And that's when things started to take a turn. Neighbors came forward claiming Rudy'd been living with his mother this entire time. Family came forward claiming those photos of Rudy in the hospital were actually from 2012. And community activist Quanell X came forward claiming he talked to Rudy himself. On July 5th, Grace White shared Quanell's allegations and the reaction from Rudy's family.
I'm going to say I'm very worried about Rudy. Very worried.
Pauline Sanchez Rodriguez is fighting back tears.
I didn't want to get involved, but with my daughter, my oldest, says, Mom, come.
Worried about her nephew, Rudy Farias, after activist Quanell X held a press conference this afternoon saying Rudy hasn't really been missing for 8 years.
He kept saying, I don't want her to go to prison. I don't want her to go to prison.
Quanell says it was Rudy's mother, Janie Santana, that called him for help this morning. He says Santana asked him to come to this hotel where she and Rudy were planning to meet with Houston police. But when Quanell arrived, what he says Rudy told detectives was heartbreaking.
She would ask him to play daddy. She told him that he had to be the husband. She would force him to sleep in the bed with her.
According to Quanell, Rudy told detectives his mother hid him in her house, gave him drugs, and physically and sexually abused him. All while Quanell says she was profiting off his disappearance by raising money for the search.
I've never seen Rudy since the day he went missing.
Sylvia Lopez is another aunt who says over the years she even traveled out of state with Santana to look for her son.
She had me out there in California thinking that they had found somebody that looked like Rudy in California, and I went all the way with her.
After Quanell X's comments, Houston police announced they'd hold a press conference the next morning to update the public on their investigation. When they did, detectives disputed those disturbing allegations, saying Rudy never disclosed abuse to them during their conversations. Some of the new details they revealed included that he returned home the day after he was reported missing, but officers say his mother deceived them, telling them a nephew was the one living with her. HPD pushed for charges for both Rudy and his mother for giving them false names, but said the district attorney's office declined to pursue them until the investigation was complete. And Chief Finner insisted multiple times it is only just getting started. Pressed about whether Rudy was sexually assaulted or suffered sexual abuse, investigators wouldn't say whether they believed Rudy was a victim. They did say at the time he disappeared, he was 17 and considered an adult in the state of Texas.
Rudy's safe. He is with his mother by choice.
And he's an adult?
Yeah. He's a 25-year-old man.
The chief is not going to know if those allegations are true or not unless Rudy had been taken to go get medically evaluated.
You'll remember that's Rudy's cousin, Michelle Rodriguez, who along with some of his aunts was angry. They said in an interview after the press conference that they felt like HPD failed them and that more needed to be done to protect Rudy. Our reporter Matt Doherty tagged along with one of those aunts as she tracked him down and visited with him, she says, for the first time in more than 8 years.
Pauline Sanchez says after speaking with her nephew today, he wants nothing else to do with his mother. She says she believes the allegations that Quanell X made yesterday are true.
Get away from my house. Get away from my house.
Things did not start cordially this afternoon when the aunt of Rudy Farias showed up to this home in East Houston to pay her nephew a visit.
I want to press charges. She's not here. Where's the warrant for Janie Sanchez? Then come to my house when you got a warrant.
Pauline Sanchez told us Rudy is staying with a friend of his mother's, but when Pauline showed up at the house, the woman inside called 911 and refused to let her in the door.
That's what she said too. Rudy's in there, but she's not willing to speak with anybody at this time.
But later on, Sanchez's son was first allowed inside to see his cousin, and then Sanchez herself was eventually allowed to see him too. Okay, Pauline, so this was the first time you've seen him in how long?
Since 2015.
She says she gave him a blessed rosary from the Holy Land.
It was beautiful, very beautiful to see him. We hugged until I finally let go.
Sanchez says Farias will clearly need professional help for what he's endured. She told us her nephew is getting to choose where he lives for the first time and whether he wants to see his mother, Janie Santana.
He made the statement that he doesn't want to see his mom. He doesn't want to go back to his mom.
Sanchez says she did not ask Farias about it, but believes what he allegedly told activist Quanell X yesterday, that he'd been drugged and physically and sexually abused by his mother for years.
But if Rudy told Mr. X what in reality happened, everybody has to believe that story.
Janie Santana has not been charged with a crime, although her family says they would like for her to be arrested. Grace White is looking into why no charges have been filed.
Which brings us to the next big question. Where is Rudy's mom? Where is Janie Santana? Grace White tried to get that answer.
We've spent hours tonight trying to reach Rudy's mom at home and at work to hear her side of the story. I also tonight called the district attorney's office to ask why they decided to not file charges. They told me there's simply not enough evidence yet. Hi, Janie. Grace White, Channel 11.
There's still no answer from Janie Santana. I tried calling the mother of Rudy Farias this evening after Houston police held a press conference today.
Currently, the DA has declined any charges at this time for making fictitious reports and failure to ID.
The last time I saw Santana, she sped away from our cameras yesterday after initially agreeing to talk to me. That was until activist Quanell X went public with allegations of Rudy being abused. Quanell says he was in the room with Rudy and HPD detectives when Rudy made those accusations. However, today, HPD said Rudy never told them he was sexually abused. They do confirm Rudy was never really missing for 8 years.
The mother, Janie, continued to deceive police by remaining adamant that Rudy was still missing. She alleged her nephew was the person friends and family were seeing coming and going. However, we disputed that.
He hasn't checked his Facebook. He hasn't checked email.
That was Santana in 2016. We dug into our archives to find an interview she did with KHOU during a nationwide Bring Them Home campaign to highlight the missing. She talked to us 1 year after she claimed her son disappeared.
That's why we know that he wouldn't just get up and go on his own. That's not him.
During that interview, Santana claimed detectives told her Rudy may have been kidnapped and sold for human drug trafficking. However, today, HPD determined Rudy actually returned home the day after he ran away and had been home ever since.
We're going to conduct our investigation, and we're kind of right at the beginning of it.
Police told us tonight this case is still active and they're still getting new leads. They say they'll investigate any new information they get. In North Houston, Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
On Friday, July 7th, Quanell X held another press conference in which he made clear he stands by the statements he made earlier in the week. He says he doesn't believe Rudy is safe and vows to continue to fight for someone to help Rudy. We have heard from Rudy. He refuted some of Quanell's claims, telling other news outlets he felt like he had Stockholm syndrome. And that catches us up to today. Still so many questions and not many answers, though we certainly know more than we did on June 29th when Rudy reappeared. This is a story we'll continue to follow. For any new developments or updates, be sure to check KHOU.com or download the free KHOU 11 app for your phone. Thanks for watching this KHOU 11 Plus special. I'm Brandy Smith.